Hello Milkweed Nation. On this video we're going to take a look at a probable case of MW1, which is Milkweed Yellows Phytoplasma, and what it looks like on a plant in the fall and spring. And then in the next video we'll take a look at summer, what it looks like. Thanks. I'm going to use this as a Milkweed Yellows Phytoplasma monitoring site, because I don't know if this plant has milkweed yellows or if it simply has a nutrient deficiency, like if it's just low on certain nutrients like potassium or something like that. So this is the plant in question, not necessarily this stem, which goes to the clump down here, but this clump over here. And what you see in the leaves is chlorosis here in the leaves. Let's take a close look. All right, so the chlorosis is kind of a bleaching of the green that is used for photosynthesis, and so it seems to be having trouble maintaining its green. What will happen when it has milkweed yellows is the flower parts, and here's a area where the flower would have formed. The flower parts grows leaves. Now it doesn't look like that occurred this year, because if it grew leaves instead of all the petals, it would not have successfully ripened to a pod. And so there's an open pod on this plant, so I suspect that the milkweed yellows, if it is present, was not advanced enough so that it caused any problem with the flowers. It seemed to have flowered and been pollinated naturally, and so it's otherwise in good shape except for the color. Another thing I'm not seeing too much of is, besides the rippling there, I don't see too much jagged edges on the leaves, which is pretty common when you have milkweed yellows. So I'll just continue to monitor this plant. So this is October 22nd, 2022, and we'll take a look at it in 2023. All right, the last time I visited this location was October 2022, and there was a plant that I wanted to monitor that had what looked like milkweed yellows phytoplasma, also called MW1 as an acronym, and it was on these showy milkweed plants at the base of this small tree. So we're back to take a look at it, and let's see what we can find. So here's the showy milkweed, kind of dappled sunlight, real nice location. It's already starting to form flower buds. So here's the flower buds. That's a good sign. Generally healthy plant if it has flower buds. We're going to monitor those flower buds because I believe these flower buds are going to have issues. And why do I think that? Well, let's take a look at this leaf. So MW1, or Milkweed Yellows Phytoplasma, is a bacteria that is in the vascular system of the milkweed plant. And so we're looking for things that would be affected by some bacteria in the vascular system. What I'm looking at on this leaf is the leaf patterning of the veins. So if you take a look at those veins on this milkweed, they seem to be looping back on themselves a great deal. There's kind of circular patterns there kind of a mosaic. Take a look at the other leaf here. It's really pronounced on this leaf. The leaf is green, it appears healthy, but the vascular system has formed in kind of an odd way. And I think ultimately this plant is going to have problems circulating nutrients around. And I believe we have early indications of milkweed yellows phytoplasma in this plant. We're going to confirm it in June, probably mid to late June, when the buds become flowers. And when I say we're going to confirm it, what I mean is we're going to be looking at the flower morphology and take a look for specifically leaf petals growing where the flower petals should be growing. And if what we find are leaf petals where the flower petals are growing, we have a pretty good confirmation at that point that the milkweed yellows is in this plant. Look at the depth of the ridges on there. You can see the contrast. That's just a really extreme, like crisscrossing. There's something not quite normal about this showy milkweed. So what I saw last year was interesting because the flowers actually must have formed correctly. It might have been early stage. I know they formed correctly because they were pollinated and there were seeds in the fall. In October, there were seed pods that had dispersed in this area. So one question I have is, are the seeds from plants from milkweed yellows phytoplasma, are those seeds also carrying the bacteria? Um, I've never collected seeds from a plant that has it, so that would be an interesting study to do. Uh, if this plant goes to seed, maybe I'll collect them and grow them in a remote area. Take a look at that. The veins are like popping out of the plant. Fascinating. And right there is the plant that we were just looking at. We're going to come over here just a little bit, and there's another clump. Presumably a different plant, although the rhizome could have just sent up new stems here. Here's another indication of milkweed yellows phytoplasma. This plant actually has two indicators in addition to the indicator about the vascular system. And here you can see the veins they're kind of shaky. They're kind of like varicose veins. So that's what we just talked about. In addition to that, we already have leaves that have kind of a red stem. This will vary by milkweed, but this is showy milkweed, so the stems are generally a real crisp green color. But in this one, we have in that center stem, it's a red color, and that's usually indication of some type of problem with the nutrients being transmitted through the leaves in the vascular system, and that's caused by the bacteria MW1. So, in addition to the red stem on this leaf, I'm also looking at the leaf being wavy right here, and also on the new leaf that's coming in, it's wavy. And there's milkweeds that do this. Clasping milkweed, Asclepias amifloxalis, is one of them. But showy milkweed generally has a real smooth leaf. So for this leaf to have wavy edges, that's an indication that something's not growing normally. There's something irregular about it. And I believe that is MW1, milkweed yellows phytoplasma. Um, we're going to take a look at this plant in the early summer and take a look at the flowers and see what's going on. I'd like to point out that these two plants are growing in a beautiful location. We're right here next to the Jordan River. There's numerous different pollinator species, pollinator flowers out here. And so If this was in a garden and you were cultivating numerous milkweeds, the recommendation would be to pull up the stems and try to stop the spread of the bacteria to other milkweeds. But in this kind of habitat, uh, I've ridden this area on my bicycle and looked for other milkweeds. I don't believe there's any geographically here within a half mile at least, possibly further. Here's a fun plant that's growing nearby, and that's dogbane. I think it's Indian hemp dogbane, and that's a great doppelganger to the milkweed. Um, it's got opposed leaves. It's got that flower right at the apex of the plant, but the flowers are different in that they are not milkweed flowers. These white butterflies, they're going to be nectaring on these in a couple of weeks. The tussock moth, which can also host on milkweed, will host on the dogbane. Great native plant here in North America. Plastic bottle, that's far too common here. So great habitat. So for that reason, I'm not going to uproot these plants or disrupt them until I have 100% confirmation on Milkweed Yellows Phytoplasma. And that's going to come when I confirm that the blooms themselves have leaf petals growing out of them. That's really the confirmation. But I think with the numerous things that I covered, we're going to see that this summer. The plant, even though it has the bacteria, is still a host plant for the monarch. In fact, some animals, some invertebrates might actually stay away from showy milkweed that has milkweed yellows, or any milkweed that has milkweed yellows. They might actually avoid the plant because it has something irregular going on that they might consider undesirable. However, if the monarch lays eggs on it, it is a suitable host plant for the caterpillar to consume and go through metamorphosis on. So it can eat, all 5 instars can eat the plant, even if it has MW1, and it will still produce a healthy monarch. So that's something to keep in mind. Even though it's infected with a bacteria that is inhibiting its ideal growth, it's still a host plant for the monarch. The bacteria is not known to be harmful to the monarch larvae. Keep that in mind. Thank you.